scalability and our customers and I'll bring it back to 2020 when COVID hit, like companies could not find talent quick enough for the demand of their customers, and they were struggling, and we were able to come in and say, hey.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Hey, folks, we're back for another show of Simply Trade podcast, and we greatly appreciate your listenership. And you have been sharing us. You have been liking us. You have been giving us some comments. That's a great thing. We need more of that because, quite frankly, we are hitting some new milestones, so we could really use your help as you're continuing on with that. Lila and I are enjoying this, but let me tell you, the folks at Global Trade Training Center have been working their tails off and have done a great job. But it all comes back to, apparently we are hitting topics that you seem to like. So we are going to get into something today, and hopefully it's going to help you, because we're going to talk about nearshoring. Well, what the heck is that? Well, we're going to get to, deal with some of that. And we have a couple of good folks on. Lila, I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce them, but we've got some really cool things to talk about today, I think.
I think so too. And it's kind of funny how things align, because you and I were just talking about this earlier regarding how your most recent contract had expired, and now you're looking at doing different things, and how we were talking about the. Well, I mean, it's funny because you talked about workforce optimization, or we're talking not necessarily workforce optimization, but you were talking about how we are going to try to focus, or you're going to try to focus on helping organizations make their processes more efficient, more lean, with regards to trade, of course. And it's funny, we were just talking about that a couple of weeks ago, and I got a call from our friends over at FreightWaves and asked me if I wanted to, or if I could speak at a conference in February that happened to be, well, I just saw Nearshoring, and I thought to myself, yeah, I've done a lot of work in the with Mexico and offshoring. We used to call it offshoring. It's obviously now nearshoring, being in Mexico. But I thought, yeah, we'll do it. And when I found out more and dug in more, that it has a lot to do also with workforce optimization, bringing outsourcing some of your work, not necessarily what we used to think clerical work. Remember back in the day, Andy, that there used to be big shops in the Philippines that were doing classification for HTS. They were classifying products. They were that way you didn't have to worry about. And then a lot of they were outsourcing a lot of like purchasing and stuff like that out into like big shops in the Philippines and stuff like that. But nowadays, I mean, of course, there's also like you can outsource your IT. A lot of IT functions, a lot of like cybersecurity stuff that you might want to have expertise, engineering and all that. But anyway, I don't want to take too much of the thunder from our guests, but it aligned and all that. And so I'm really happy. We'll talk a little bit about that conference that I'm going to attend here towards the end of the show. But so welcome. We have two people joining us from the organization or the company called Lean Solutions Group, or please help me. Lean, yes, right? Yeah, okay. Lean Solutions Group. Okay, good. Lean Solutions Group, and we have Hunter Bell and we have Gena Mann. Both of them are in the company. They're helping with different aspects of the either the conference or even the organization. So we have them. Welcome. Thank you for coming on our show and on short notice. And hopefully we can educate people on this.
Yeah, glad to be here.
And we appreciate you coming on and whatnot. Let's jump in here real quick. Is that on the nearshoring versus farshoring? I guess is like, the opposite of nearshoring would be farshoring, I guess. I don't know. Outsourcing versus, insourcing. Well, insourcing is you take a function, you go in. It's interesting that companies go through a cycle. And, as they're growing, they may be a small company, can't really, don't have the resources built or infrastructure built to handle certain functions. And then as time goes, they'll reach out to some vendors. Well, then they get to a certain point and go, if we take that in house, we can, do this cheaper than when I'm paying somebody. Then they get to a certain point where that almost becomes a bottleneck. And it's like, okay, you're doing a function that is not necessarily the prime focus of your company, but you still have to do this function. And so then you look at outsourcing again. It's almost like, again, full circle. And if you outsource it, it could be, just about anywhere. So Hunter, let me ask you a question if I'm, as I'm going through this, this nearshoring idea that we're going to be talking about, I mean, what is it for sure? Is it just a new name? Did somebody put lipstick on a pig and call it something else as far as outsourcing? Oh, well, now we're going to call it nearshoring or what? Yeah, obviously I'm, a little bit bubble off center here. So, forgive my comments, but nearshoring versus outshoring, or what are we talking about?
Yeah, awesome. So I appreciate you guys having us on the show today. When you look at traditional outsourcing, we call it kind of offshoring too. You're looking at more of, far away from the U.S., India, Philippines, Eastern Europe. So when you consider nearshoring, which is where we specialize, we look at Colombia, Guatemala, Mexico, all similar time zones to the U.S., very easy to get to these locations. Like our facilities are 2.5-hour flight from Fort Lauderdale. So when you look at nearshoring, it's kind of more location based, I would say. And then traditional outsourcing kind of BPO is, hey, here's our process, go do it. We don't really mind who's doing that process with us. And nearshoring, we're more about collaborating and really setting up our customer's office nearshore with these positions that they're looking to fill. So like any sort of entry level roles in transportation, super high touch, obviously, where you got to call the driver, you got to call the warehouse, call your customer. So the ability to tap into that talent nearshore is kind of where we specialize.
All right. So nearshoring, you're saying, is more of a geographic scenario that you're at least you're outsourcing a function, but you're doing it in somewhat, and I'll just call it regionally. And this, what you just mentioned is kind of a North Central America scenario there, right?
Yep, like Latin America.
All right. So to that point, let's stop for a second. I want to, to our listeners, folks, we've been talking about with all the geopolitical issues that have been going on, as well as the tensions between, U.S. and China is by default. We're all creatures of habit. And for decades now, it seems like that people just would constantly reach out to China. Oh, that's the only source to manufacture something inexpensively or whatever. In this case, you're talking about probably looking more from a service perspective, Hunter, if I've got that right, versus a manufacturer. And correct me or add that in a second. But for our listeners, what Hunter just mentioned, if you're sitting there listening, is the Latin American areas. That's another source to consider when you're looking at geographically, where should I look in the world to find another source in the event that China takes over Taiwan and you have two key areas that now their supply chains are going to be severely disrupted if you continue on with that. Now, I'm not saying completely cut off from that, but what I'm saying is you got to diversify your sources now in today's world because of the geopolitical tensions. Would that be a fair statement and a good approach, Hunter?
Yeah, I think even when COVID happened, it kind of opened the eyes to you need another supplier, you need another country, because it was pretty crazy times when 2020 came around and, we couldn't even get toilet paper on the shelves. People were freaking out. And I think that's when a lot of people here in the U.S. realized how important supply chain transportation logistics is for this, this country. And I just saw, I think Mexico surpassed China's top U.S. trading partner, which is pretty crazy to see.
Yes, Mexico, Canada, and China. So China dropped from the first level down to the third level as far as imports into the U.S.
Yeah.
So,
and I think part of that is the container shortage, the labor shortage. Like, again, I think COVID kind of pressed pretty heavy on how it's not that easy to get it from China to here when certain scenarios happen.
So what would be the best way that if somebody's looking at doing some nearshoring, I mean, I guess the other scenario here is you've got to consider some things. How can somebody get up to speed on if my company is faced with some financial challenges? Let's just face it. I mean, inflation in the U.S. as well as around the world is going up. Inflation in the month of December was much higher than what was anticipated and whatnot. And just because some of the government officials are saying, life is great and the U.S. economy is wonderful and all that, just because they say it doesn't make it so. It's like, some of those folks that are at those podiums giving those press conferences trying to spin it. It's like they're an old cowboy that's probably all hat and no cattle. So if I'm going to get up to speed on some of this, Gena, let me ask you a question. What do I do? How do I, get proficient on this? What would be my next steps or something here just to learn about this?
Sure. I think the biggest thing is finding a partner, right? The right partner. Somebody who is doing it really well, is set up, has good processes. Obviously that's what we do. We're a partner for, over 600, US based companies, right now. And I think that's the biggest thing is you've got to find someone who has, talent, the right talent. It's got to be the right timing at the right cost, all of those things, especially in today's economic environment where people are trying to do that more with less. So they've got to maximize efficiencies. They've also got to increase their customer experience, right? Customers are looking for more and companies have less. So there's all kinds of efficiencies that organizations are looking for today. And if you're thinking about, one of the challenges that we see, not only with our customers, but you see reports on it all the time, is building resilient and agile workforces. And so, to do that, I mean, for a company in the U.S. to try to do that outside of, the U.S. parameters, I mean, they would have to invest heavily in recruitment and training and onboarding. And so that's why, finding a partner who's already doing that and can supply that for you, would be the first thing that an organization should look for.
Well, one thing that comes into play, I mean, people, this is one of those where I would say you could be penny wise and pound foolish, as Benjamin Franklin used to say, that as you're looking at some of this stuff is that, yeah, you could do it on your own rather than paying an expert or somebody to guide you. However, if you are trying to get through some things and be competitive and do it quickly, I mean, that's why, there are consultants out there. There are companies that can guide you along. You know what? Work smarter, not harder. So, everybody's looking for bigger, better, faster, cheaper. I get that. However, in looking at it, it would be wise for you to get somebody to guide you along. And as you're going along, it may open up to more services for that company or some others that you may need to get. But the key thing is getting through that learning curve quickly. So, Gena, I think that may be a key factor that, just like what you were saying. By the way, listeners, we're going to have Gena and Hunter's contact information, their company information with our show notes and all that. So you'll be able to click in there if you're interested in just investigating this. If you are in a frontline or middle management scenario and some things are going on, even if you're in executive level, this would be one of those to say, well, what can you do? So, Hunter, let me come back to you. What would be some of the things to nearshore that you could see that in today's world, today's economy, with some of the things going on, what would be some of the services or tasks or things that you're looking at that you would recommend that companies could consider to outsource or nearshore, whatever?
Yeah, typically when we're talking with potential customers, we always like to dive into their specific challenges, their objectives, their goals for the year, and talking to individual departments, right? So you have the finance side, you have the operations side, you have on the asset-based carrier, we'll have the recruiting side, and really understand the customer's challenges in finding talent, retaining talent, training the talent that comes on board. So it starts with that, more of a conversation of understanding within the organization, as you look at your org chart, what is that low hanging fruit of positions? Like we specialize in the track and trace positions, the customer service, dispatching, any sort of billing, invoicing, a lot of functions that can be done remote easily from the US. We find it very easy to do down in Latin America as well.
All right, so here's going to be one of the key things. The people that are listening here, especially if they're frontline folks, is like, well, why would I even want to bring this up? Because if they nearshore or outsource this function, I may lose my job. What do you say to that?
So when we're talking to an organization, we always try to say, listen, delegate the tasks that is difficult for people in the US and then to find people to do those tasks and elevate your existing team. So we're always telling our customers, take those individuals, if you have them doing those tasks, and actually elevate them within the organization and have them focus on revenue producing tasks that are actually growing that organization first. Just some of these tasks that have to be done in order to keep the customer. So that's kind of our approach on it, where we believe, again, we want to provide kind of those lower level functions in Colombia and then help our customers continue growing with the medium high level functions here in the US.
I hear a lot about this is like, oh, AI is going to take my job. AI is this. AI is going to replace so many people. What people don't realize is that AI is your coworker. They're your partner. They're your helper, not your replacement. And I feel like this is very similar to what you guys are saying. Like how many times, Andy, have we talked about doing your due diligence and your work on your validating your supply chain? You doing it by yourself, trying to validate that supply chain by yourself on forced labor, on green trade, on cybersecurity, on terror, anything, weapons of mass destruction, you name it. I mean, illicit drugs and all that are coming on your supply chain. You try to do it by yourself, that shipment's never going to get in. You know what I mean? And so if you allocate these functions to other either individuals that need to physically do the work or AI to help you identify some of that, AI is not going to do everything. AI is going to tell you, I think this might be suspicious. I think this might be a problem. And then somebody needs to dig in deeper, and that would be your personnel, but you're not going to do it. Why not have someone like Hunter said on your lower levels? I kind of like wanted to compare it and kind of put it in perspective for those that are listening that are in the trade. I figured, to me, that's what makes sense. That's what is a functionality or the efficiencies that we can see.
Yeah. A lot of people say it's people or technology. We try to say it's people and technology. How do we create technology that enhances individuals to make them more productive? And how do you get more out of an employee through AI? So we're investing heavily in technology. We're really looking at how do we make this individual down in Colombia more productive? How do we make them excited to show up and excited to use this technology? How do we make the training easy to actually adopt this technology? Because what we see a lot in transportation is there's all these different kind of technologies, but the people within the organization, they don't want to use them. They know exactly their job function, their day-to-day process. So why are they going to try to learn something new and use this technology? So we're trying to make it as easy as possible to enhance the day-to-day and also train on this new tech.
Well, to your point, and one of the things that most companies are really struggling with in today's world is finding people to fill, especially frontline positions. And in that is that, okay, so, another scenario here is that the leadership of companies, you need to make sure that you're not buying into the fallacy. Oh, I can outsource this, get away with, completely dealing and maybe even getting rid of some of my employees or whatever, and expect that to move forward, smoothly. You still need to enhance what you've already got. I guess the scenario that I'm looking at, I use that, somebody pointed out to me, by the way, and forgive my little sidebar here. I apparently say scenario a whole heck of a lot. So, all right, I need to try and come up with a different word. But in the scenario of one of the best things you can do is look at developing. I mean, Hunter, you touched on it, is taking your current staff and continuing to develop them. Lalo, you mentioned it, is that if there's a function that goes on, a red flag comes up, you're using some automation or you using some nearshoring, there's going to be exceptions that come up that is where your staff here in the stateside or within the company has the expertise of your company, and they can navigate within your company more effectively than some outsource vendor. So the point being is that enables them to stay focused on the exceptions and resolve those quickly, compared to them being down, caught up or tied down to just day in and day out functions that you could possibly outshore. Would that be a good, assessment of one of the benefits of nearshoring?
For sure. I think it's worth mentioning too, like scalability and our customers and I'll bring it back to 2020 when COVID hit. Like, companies could not find talent quick enough for the demand of their customers, and they were struggling, and we were able to come in and say, hey, we have 30, 40, 100 people available, turnkey, ready to go, that we can place in your account, within 2 weeks, where they were struggling to even get resumes in the door for some of these functions. So, like, as an organization, especially in transportation, with the cycles are crazy with the boom and bust, like the ability to scale up quickly for the demand, and then when the volumes drop, being able to scale back as well. And we're a good partner to actually look at the trend and the productivity, the output, and tell our customers, hey, you don't need 30 people doing this function right now. You actually only need 20. And we work with our customers to determine the needed headcount.
Yeah. Gena, is there any recommendations for, again, in looking at this and getting exposed to, these type of, tactics in nearshoring or whatever else? Don't you have something coming up that you want to talk about?
Absolutely. I'll talk about that all day long. So yeah, we have an event. We call it Mastermind. Traditionally, this event is something that we have put on for our clients. We bring in some industry experts. We have, some panels. And then it's also a great networking opportunity. And like I said, we have over 600 clients. So it's been a great thing. This year, we have opened it up to the industry, right? We're expanding it. We're broadening a little bit. We've got some great keynote speakers coming in. We've got, Damon John from the Shark Tank coming in, and a guy named Mike Abrashoff. I'm just going to talk about this because, his story is amazing. And I think it's something that would be so beneficial for, businesses today. So he was, formerly the youngest U.S. Navy commander. He was assigned the worst ship in the fleet. And in 12 months, he turned the ship around with the same crew to the best performing ship. And I think that organizations are looking for that today, right? They've got a lot of challenges with this down market, especially in the transportation that we're seeing. So he's going to be coming in speaking. I'm excited to hear, his story. And then we've got this, really, really great marketing guru coming in named Andy Lark. And then the rest of the day is filled with a lot of industry discussions, like Lalo, for one, who's going to be coming in and just giving us some of those insights. The great part about the event is the networking. I mean, they're going to be surrounded with other, business leaders who are facing some of the same challenges. So we have a lot of networking opportunity. And then you put it in the backdrop of Cartagena, Colombia. I don't know what event could be better. You've got a, beautiful city, with a lot of culture, and just a great lineup of good, information and networking opportunities. And that's going to be, February.
When is this? Is in February what?
Yeah. It's February the 12th and 13th. And we have a very easy to remember, URL that you can go to, nearshoreexperience.com. You can get all the information, see the agenda. We have a hotel that has a block of rooms to make it easy for attendees to, make those reservations. So just go to nearshoreexperience.com and you get all the information you need.
All right. So it's in the country of Colombia, Cartagena, Colombia, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So in looking at that, is that the travel expenses down there are actually pretty favorable, aren't they? It's probably less expensive to go to Colombia than it is out to spend time in LA or something, and so.
Right, for sure. And of course, we've negotiated, rates, for the hotel. It is a Hilton resort. And of course, Cartagena is a very tourist, attraction, city. It ranks very favorably with, the travel advisor and all of those things. But we also have it well planned that, you don't have to worry about coming to a foreign country and being on your own. We will have shuttles, to get you around, and then you'll be with the group the rest of the time. And we've got some really great experiences, in store for the attendees.
All right. So I'm going to say this, and you may not necessarily, care for this question, but I'm like, traditionally, where a lot of U.S. folks are looking at things, you think of Colombia, and there's two key things that come out of Colombia. There's coffee and there's drugs in that scenario. And it's like, okay, so, and you see some of the movies that, work it up and all that.
For
so
sure.
It sounds like you're dealing with something, but, obviously, coffee wise, that's a good thing. But from a safety perspective and all that, can you address some of that?
Yeah.
It sounds like you've already got shuttles going, but my understanding, it's a pretty stable environment there in Cartagena, isn't it?
Oh gosh, for sure. And, we have offices all over Colombia, and I go to Colombia all the time. I mean, my passport is just full. I'm in Bogota, I'm in Barranquilla, I'm in Cartagena, Medellin, all of those places. And I do travel, by myself to these places. So, just from that perspective, yeah. And here's what we would say to anybody, and what we would tell our clients or anybody who's considering coming. I mean, it's just like any other city here in the U.S. There are places that you can go and find trouble if that's what you're looking for. But, if you say, that could be true of Dallas or Chicago. I'm actually in the Dallas area. So, it can be true of any, big city like that in the U.S. But obviously, if you're going, for the purpose of business or leisure, and you're looking for those things like the coffee farms and stuff like that, I mean, it is absolutely safe. And we have our clients who come down all the time. I don't have recent numbers for you, but I mean, I'm talking like thousands of visits in a year. And we've not had a client who's had problems.
Well, I was just looking in of the airports in there. Cartagena has about 5.7 million passengers that fly into there every year. So, I mean, that's a pretty busy airport. But all that to say is, so, and I assume you would fly into Cartagena, right? Okay. All right, folks. So here's the thing. There's and it's the mastermind is what you called it. Is that right?
Yes. Mastermind the Nearshore experience.
Okay. All right. My memory is as long as a turtle's tail and just as fast, and I don't have any notes in front of me. So I'm trying to pull that one out and see if I can get this right. All right. Mastermind the nearshoring experience in Colombia, in Cartagena, Colombia. Folks, it sounds like it would be worth, that'd be a trip worthwhile. That's coming up in February. So you only have a few weeks away. And I will also ask, just out of my ignorance, I do not believe there's any visa requirements going into Colombia. Is that correct?
Just a passport.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Hunter.
Yeah.
Well, it's like
just for the crew that's like up north or dealing with any cold weather right now. It is currently 85 degrees in Cartagena as we speak. So keep that in mind as well.
Well, the conference is on Monday and Tuesday, you said the 12th and 13th. So you would definitely be flying in over the weekend at some point in there, either Saturday, Sunday, or whatever, or earlier than that if that's what you wanted to do. So I'm sure there's some nice situations. I was just going to say, February down there, I'll bet you oh man, you'd be giddy as a filly on a spring morning and enjoying that kind of weather. So, all said and done, I guess, Hunter, anything as far as that conference or the things to look at, what would be, I guess, the top maybe, 1, 2, or 3 things to consider if I'm going to go down to this conference from your perspective, looking at this nearshoring or what, you're knowing that your brochure, your agendas and all that. What should I be gearing up for, preparing for to, from an intellectual perspective to ask the questions of or look for?
Yeah, we're super excited to have it in Cartagena. This is our first year doing it in Colombia itself. Usually we do it out in Vegas. Obviously, we do it around the Super Bowl as well, which is kind of cool. You can watch the Super Bowl. But the cool thing about it being in Cartagena, we have offices in Cartagena. So our plan is to actually show our customers and prospects our locations. And then we're having a ton of our operations people, our quality people, our directors actually coming to the event as well. So it's going to give all of our customers and prospects really a chance to see the country. Colombia is absolutely beautiful country. I've been down there probably 40, 50 times since I've been working there. One of the best part of my job is going down there and the people down there, the culture is amazing. The food's amazing. I just can't talk highly enough about Colombia as a whole. But yeah, I'd come with an open mind, excited to see the country and then excited to see what we can offer and then also just learn more about what's going on in the industry.
And, Gena, one last question on this is who would be the ideal conference attendees to go down there?
Sure. Great question. Honestly, anybody honestly, any business would benefit from this, especially a business that's considering, some of those terminologies that you use, like outsourcing or nearshoring or reshoring, right? Because it will give a perspective of how this is done. I mean, you were talking about that earlier. This is a way for someone to come in a very controlled environment and see this firsthand of what, this nearshore is all about. So number one, I would say anybody who, is considering nearshoring. And then, there's a lot of, specifics to the supply chain. So brokers, shippers, carriers, anybody who works within, freight forwarders, anyone who is in that supply chain would benefit from coming because a lot of the content is geared toward that industry. So I would say, it's wide open.
Well, sounds to me like somebody that would be a decision maker that is wanting to nearshore and they've made that decision, but they're looking for the next step would be a great candidate. Somebody a company that is giving consideration and has been assigned like a project to go out and do the research to find out more about it, to report back to upper management. And then I think the other scenario would be here I go again with a scenario, isn't it? The other would be the people that are involved, maybe in the middle management front line of certain departments, that the company is in the midst of implementing that. But I'm sure you would be learning some things on here questions or issues to address as you're implementing. Not only, here's one thing to find the right vendors, the right companies to, perform the functions you're looking for. But once you've made that decision, all right, what's the action plan in developing that? What are the questions to look for? What are the risks and all that? Is that also something that's going to be covered in your conference?
So here's what I would say. Anecdotally, yes, because we also have a lot of our clients there. So, and this is why I think it's really open
that
for
have
anyone.
Already been doing this, right?
Right.
Oh, and so then you're benchmarking. Yeah.
Right. You have the opportunity. You're going to be networking. You're going to be eating with people who are already doing this and can give you very firsthand knowledge instead of taking it from someone like us who offers the solution. I mean, you can actually be visiting and talking to people who are already nearshoring, right? And get a firsthand of what their experience was like, how easy it was or seamless it was, or what were the challenges. So from that perspective, absolutely. And then secondly is the fact that there's going to be some great content for organizations that can help them propel them forward that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with nearshoring, right? So you've got really good content just for any organization and business as they're looking to navigate the waters of 2024. But then those who are considering, looking at nearshoring, it's a great opportunity to talk to a bunch of people who are already doing it.
Give us that website address one more time.
Sure. It's nearshoringexperience.com.
Okay. Hunter, any last words from yourself as we're going into this?
No, I think we're good. Gena kind of hit it on the head. Andy, you going to come down there and come to our conference?
Yeah.
Listen, I was like, actually, I'm looking at this right now going, I would love, it's like, obviously, Lalo's going to be going down and speaking and, he'll be representing us, but I would love to be able to get down there. I'm going to have to look at my calendar now. So,
we love that.
The sad thing is that I'm sure, with that kind of weather, there's going to be a pool or something like that. But, seeing me in a swimsuit, maybe it's like everybody will run to the hills. I don't know.
Well, you're going to be busy in the conference, Andy.
Yeah.
So we're not going to, you do that on your own time. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people who are thinking the same.
Yeah. Lalo, any last words as we wrap up here?
Yeah. No, nothing else. I'm just a little concerned that I now realize the name of the conference is Mastermind. I don't think they're going to want me there anymore because there's no master in my mind.
Listen, I've seen your notes. I think you're going to do just fine.
Thank you. Well, folks, I got to tell you, this is, if you're looking at the nearshoring scenario here, outsourcing a function of any kind or whatever, as recapping here, it would be wise to get you an expert to help give you some guidance, spend a little bit of time, walk you through some things. Two, you're going to have to get yourself proficient, up to speed on what all the details are of the different functions you're looking for and whatnot. Three, I would say you definitely want to do some networking of those that have already done it. and as well as look at, if you're making the decision or you've made the decision and what you're trying to do as far as the implementation. I guess then fourth, it'd be even with benchmarking on that, how do you maintain the nearshoring? That would come into play as well with the functionalities. So, the Nearshoring Experience, the Mastermind Conference down there in Colombia, Cartagena, Colombia, in just a few weeks in February 12th and 13th, if I got that right. And with Gena and Hunter from the Lean Group, right?
Lean Solutions Group.
Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm sorry. I tell you what, I would screw up a 2-car parade and a 1-block route right now. Listen, I really enjoy y'all, and thank you so much. That Lalo and I really appreciate y'all coming on in the last moment to try and look and talk about this.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
We appreciate it. Great meeting you guys, and have a good weekend.
Folks, have a great day, and we'll leave it back to you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.